Welcome to the Numerology Podcast. I'm your host, Novalee Wilder. I'm a professional numerologist and writer. And in this podcast, we're going to nerd out, which means we're going to talk names, we're going to talk numbers, numerology, astrology, the connections between the different esoteric fields. We'll do case studies and so much more. At the end of the episode, make sure you visit my website, novaleewilder.com, where you'll find out more about numerology and yourself. If you enjoy the podcast, make sure you subscribe so that you're always the first to know when each episode is released. Let's dive into today's episode. So, I feel like it would be interesting to share a little bit like behind the scenes. Oh, I should totally interject here that I just got Invisalign. So if I am a little lispy and my Z's are not so crisp, that's why. Please forgive me. And if the ASMR of it all becomes too much, I totally get it. But today I wanted to talk about some behind the scenes stuff. I wanted to talk a little bit about like what happens before a name change. And this is because I think sometimes when we go to readers, psychics, astrologers, palm readers, numerologists, human design readers, what have you, we can have an idea of like how they prep and what they do. We can have an idea of like how much time that takes and the skills and like the process. We can also sometimes think that people just kind of show up and wing it. In this day and age, we might also think that people will use AI or some kind of software. So I just thought it would be interesting to share with you what I do and what I teach my students to do. So today it's going to be kind of like a mix between how I would teach it to someone doing it and how I would share with you in case you were curious about what happens before a name change session. And let's just dive right into it. So the first thing I ask people to do is to fill out a questionnaire ahead of the session. So I, as the numerologist, have all the info I need when I sit down and I start to calculate. So I need your birthday and your birth time if possible. If you don't have your birth time, you just have like an approximate time, that's cool too. I really just like to know when people are born around midnight because that can like influence things. I need your full current legal name, and I also need any previous name changes and the dates of those if there are any. I also ask people to list out any possible name choices that they like or have family ties to. And just like to tell me if there's anything I should know ahead of the session. So this could also be like, maybe there's a part of the name that they really dislike, or part of the name that they're like, this is really hard for me to give up. It's really important for me to know ahead of time if there's something that really is like crucial for this name change to be something they want to do, if there are any deal breakers. It's also a way sometimes for me to feel into like, are you ready for this? Because if someone comes and like, I like all parts of my name, but I also want a name change, I'm like, okay, well something's gotta give. So when I sit with the form, everything people have filled out in the form, the first thing I do, and also the first thing I ask my students to do, is to like take it step by step and look at the birth date to get a sense of this essence, this soul, this potential before looking at the name. We kind of gather this info to see what this soul wants to experience in this lifetime. What are the challenges? What are the gifts? What are the like personality traits that might be there? I also look at if people are born in a male or female body. I think it's interesting to look at how numbers express themselves through the form we have chosen to take in this lifetime. Because while the numbers don't care about your gender, the world does. So sometimes looking at the base numbers of a birthday tells us one story, but then knowing that this birthday belongs to a man or a woman means that we read it a little bit different. So we pay attention to the first and second base number We pay attention to the rhythm that a person is born into, their age. I also look at their sun sign, their connected elements, all of the numbers, our planetary rulers. I kind of make any initial notes on the interaction between all of these numbers now. Because when I get further in, I might get different information, or my own biases might come up. So it's really important to give like a little bit of time to that initial assessment of just the birthday. Next thing I do is that I look at a client's current name, and I calculate and I look at their current numeroscope. And I also look at any previous numeroscope. So the numeroscope is the birthday plus the name. And you can see examples of numeroscopes on my website or in my book, A Little Bit of Numerology. And I look at each numeroscope creates a code. That code is something you carry as long as you carry that name. When you change your name, the code often changes. If it doesn't, that's interesting. And there might be some intuitive hits right around here. I also, at this point, when I have everything, both like the journey of like where have they been before and where are they currently, in case they've changed their name, for any reason, I mark any balanced name vibrations they might be able to keep. So there's the stuff that we put in or that a client might put in the form when booking a session. But then there's also me sitting with the numeroscope and thinking, what looks good here? Because a balanced name vibration is something we want to keep if possible. It kind of creates an anchor for calculating the new numeroscope. This could be the first, it could be a middle, it could be a last name, it could be anything that might work for this base number. And if nothing is possible, if I look at all the names and I go, damn, this will not quite work without like maybe different spelling, or we have to move some stuff around, I make a note to let the client know about this at the very start of the session, because I want us to be on the same page, and I don't want you to sit through like an hour and a half of explanations thinking that certain things can be saved or worked with. I would rather kind of like be upfront about it, so that we walk into the deeper reading with an understanding of like, these vibrations are not serving you, they will have to go because of these things. The next thing I do, once I've done all of this, is that I calculate the yearly cycles, at least 3 years, usually 7, sometimes more, into the past, because I kind of want to see, the yearly cycles are a way we can kind of look at what does it feel like for someone born on that date with that name to go through time. So this is a little bit like transits in astrology, but they change based on our name. So I look at the past to see what they've been through, and also to kind of see if maybe they've kind of gathered some baggage, some energies that will release in this new name change. Because as we go through one name to another, we kind of set down some of those filters and lessons and bags and patterns, and we pick up some new ones. And it's kind of interesting to see what are some of the current themes that they've been going through, how does it fit with their current name, and who are the players on the stage for them. I also look at, there could be things like disease or challenge that I might want to be extra careful around. I can never claim that name changes heal or cure disease, but I can say that it looks like, when I look at it, like we can halt certain things, not rewind time, but pause or halt certain patterns. This is what we do now in this. Like I ask my students to like pay attention to the patterns you see in the numeroscope, and if any of those patterns are repeated in the yearly cycles, because that really reveals you something that you should bring up in the session. And I also do this when I get to the session. If something stands out to me, I might ask if a specific physical manifestation of a pattern has come up. The next thing I do, once I have, everything old, is that I look at everything new. So I calculate every possible harmonious numeroscope and the codes to see the possibility for change. And I make a note of what energies will interact with the new numeroscope. So when you think about a name change, you can kind of think about it as like, oh, this is a weird image, like two dissolving pancakes. So you have the old pancake and you have the new pancake. So like the two numeroscopes, like pieces of paper or pancakes are like lying on top of each other. And one is slowly dissolving and one is slowly becoming more and more solid. And so they're overlapping for a period of time. And some of the flavors in these pancakes work really well together. They can be placed on top of each other with no like bad outcomes or bad tastes. And some of the ingredients in these pancakes really don't work well. Like if you tasted it, you would be like, no, don't want to eat that. And this might be a weird image to use, but that's how I look at new possible harmonious numeroscopes. There might be, names that this person really likes, and we try to make it work. But then we also see that like when this new name is placed on the old name, there might be kind of like a chemical reaction. So we're trying to make, there's a helicopter outside my window. Sorry for the background noise. We try to make it as smooth a journey as possible, which means that we try to make it as pleasant a thing to eat and interact with. Once we have all the possible harmonious numeroscopes, which is usually like 2 to 5, depending on the base number we're looking at, the next thing we do is we calculate the new yearly cycles. So I already touched upon the yearly cycles, but each new numeroscope will probably have a new code and a new yearly cycle, and we calculate those yearly cycles to see what they look like. Kind of like, what does the ocean in front of the ship look like? Do we got any storms coming? For some people, like they have kind of planned storms, like things that are just kind of part of the journey. And for others, we can see with different numeroscopes that like, ooh, this one looks more intense. This one looks softer. You don't ever want a completely calm sea. That is unnatural. Like perfection does not exist. It doesn't really exist in nature, and it definitely also doesn't really exist in numerology, but we might have preferences, and different numerologists might have preferences for what they like to see in the yearly cycles. And what we also need to see in each of these yearly cycles to even like consider them is some form of karmic release, which is kind of like a door or a specific kind of storm, if we're using that image, where the old name and all the energetic patterns of it fully leaves, and the new name is kind of like standing strong and clear and like solidly and independently. If there is no karmic release, then we can't use that numeroscope. So we might have in the beginning of our process, when we're finding harmonious numeroscopes, we might be like, oh, I like that, I don't like that, and they can get all their like wishes fulfilled and so on and so forth. And then when we get to this phase of looking at possible numeroscopes, we go, ooh, that cycle looks a little rough, or that cycle doesn't have a karmic release. So when we're doing this, when we're calculating the yearly cycles, people can be born into different rhythms. There is a 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5 rhythm, meaning a 1-year cycle, a 2-year cycle, a 4-year cycle, an 8-year cycle, a 7-year cycle, and a 5-year cycle before it repeats again. That's one of the cycles. It's going to take you 27 years to go through that entire cycle. Then there are people born into a 3, 6, 3, 6, 3, 6, 3, 6 cycle. It's going to take you 9 years to complete that cycle. And then there are people born into a 9, 9, 9, 9, 9 rhythm. You could do this right now. It's a silly little thing, but like if you add up the numbers in the year you were born, you will get a number, and based on what I shared just now, you will know if you were born into the 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5 rhythm, the 3, 6, 3, 6, 3, 6 rhythm, or the 9, 9, 9 rhythm. Because that's like the year you were born into is going to give one of these numbers, and that's going to determine the rhythm. So If someone is born in a year that adds up to 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, or 5, we have to calculate 27 future years for each of these numeroscopes. And I fully get the people who have gotten software to do this for them, but I am old school in this way. I get so much information out of calculating these yearly cycles. There are things I understand about them when I'm doing this, and I feel like sometimes when people just can do these things with like a click of a button, I'm like, it's really okay to use tools, but when you use a machine, you take some information away from you, a process away from you, that might actually be the thing that can open your intuition and your insight and like some of the things that make you a good reader. So this is my little rant on this. But we do have to calculate all these cycles to get the full picture of what does this numeroscope do for this person. And we kind of do a little math, like depending on a person's base number, there might be a certain amount of like storms in these waters that we're willing to deal with and accept. I've talked about the karmic release. It's always interesting to see when it lies. Also, like I've seen some people where the karmic release happens, or like they've been to a different numerologist and the numerologist has said that like, oh, it's fine, your karmic release is a little bit quicker. The karmic release should be at least 12 months into the future from the name change. So this is also something I will note on the papers and email that I send out after, and I will talk to my client about in the session, that like this karmic release is kind of important depending on when the name change falls. You know, that karmic release might be different. I will give them a window depending on where they are in the world. That might be a very short window. It might be a really long window. If you're in the US, you will get a longer window because it takes a little bit longer to change your name. If you're in Norway or Sweden or Denmark, most name changes are done within 24 hours. They're so quick, so you might get a shorter window to get to like decide and send in your application. So when we have done everything in these previous steps, like I hope you noticed that like I haven't yet talked about the actual session. This is the stuff that happens before. I will write out a long, detailed email, even ahead of the session, outlining a lot of the things that I will also cover in the session, like the right numeroscope, the name vibrations that will fit it, if the sequence of names in the numeroscopes can be shuffled in any way, if there are any of the names they liked that fit into it. I will give them name lists. I really like to go a little above and beyond, like I also ask people, I forgot to say that. I also ask people in the intake form where they will be doing this name change, and I will go ahead and find links for them. So if they're American, I will find you your local court and the process, and I will link to any kind of like legal forms you might need, like pricing on things, like fees and stuff like that. So because it's like, it can be a little overwhelming to first sit down and figure out your name and then sit down and have to figure out the legal route you have to go through. So I will link all of those things as well. So this all happens before the actual name change session. I tell my students that with their first clients, they really should set aside a day or two to do this. One day to do it all, not that they will work through it all day, but like one focus couple of 2-3 hours, go through it, make a choice or have options. Sometimes we go into a session having only one good option, and it's kind of simple like that. Sometimes we might have 2 or 3. I always find that like I don't want to give my clients too many options because there are preferences. Like I will probably have a preference out of these numeroscopes. So like usually I bring 1 or 2 options to the session. But I tell my students, do it all in one day, sleep on it, maybe sleep a couple of days on it, come back to it, check your math, go through it one more time, and see if you arrive at the same spot. And we do this because we can show up to the session absolutely sure that our math is right and we have found the option that we truly think is the best one for this client, that's going to support them the most, make them the most powerful, make them the most happy, and really set them up for this new identity, new step, new world. I have heard and met some people who are capable of doing all of this basically in the session. So they will ask all the information in the session. They will do these calculations. Maybe they are super quick or have a really good memory for possible numeroscopes. They're super quick to calculate yearly cycles. As I said, sometimes those 27 years, it takes a moment. It takes a moment to calculate them all. Some people do this. I know very seasoned people who do this. And I guess also if you use the software of some kind, maybe you could do some of this in the very first minutes of the session. But I think the most important thing that I can bring to a live session is my presence. Both to make my client feel safe, and it's the safest if I'm fully there, not in my notes or on a different screen. And because you did pay for my prep time, and I shouldn't do my prep time in front of you. Kind of, if that makes sense. This is not to come down hard on anyone who does anything differently. This is just what I've seen for myself and for my students, that the prep makes me feel safe so I can show up and make you feel safe. And if my clients feel safe and I'm present, then we can go really deep in this reading and more things can unfold, because there's the stuff I prep, and then there's just the stuff that unfolds and opens in that meeting between a client and a numerologist who really knows their stuff. We are moving on to what happens in a live one-on-one session. So my sessions are done via Zoom. Sometimes I do them in person. That mostly happens in Denmark, actually, with Danish clients. Not a lot of people come to LA to have a one-on-one session. But the first thing I do is to set them at ease. And any questions they might have, we can kind of cover those. I let them know that I'm a talker and then just need to interrupt, because I will be a wall of information, because I got a lot to say and a lot to share and a lot that I think they should know. And also the first part of the session is going to be about their birthday. So that's what I do. I map out their essence so they hopefully feel seen, heard, and validated at a pretty core level about who they are as a person. And then I move on to this overlay of their current numeroscope and their name vibrations. And I also touch on the last 3 years of the yearly cycles to kind of clarify those current vibrations and what we could call the vibrational reality that they're living in. But I also make sure they know that they can interrupt this wall of information that I kind of put up. And I really, my sessions are, they're laid out as being 2 hours. They often go to 3 hours. Because sometimes we get on a detour that we need, a side quest that we need to cover. A name change session is hopefully the only name change session you will ever have. And it should be a good experience, and you should have the feeling that you can ask any questions and that no stone is left unturned. So we kind of get to connect the dots and see how everything plays out. Once we have covered everything in their old numeroscope, I let them know that if they were sitting with me in reality, they would now be asked to tear up that old numeroscope, to literally rip it apart. Since we are doing it over Zoom, I will do that for them. So I will rip up that old numeroscope, symbolically letting go of that old pattern, that old imprint, that old identity. And we might already have touched upon some of this in the session up until now, but since I will usually have 1 or 2 options, I now ask them, what is it that you want? What is your hope, your dreams, your wishes for the future? I want you to state what you do want, not like but I don't want that and I don't want this, or like we're gonna do like I want list, like I do want these things. Because their words in this moment is gonna make it so clear if you have options, which option is the right one. And by now, usually from like, if I had any doubts, even before they open their mouth and talk about these hopes and dreams, I can tell that one of the numeroscopes is the right one. Or if I only have one, it's usually a confirmation that this is the one. I have never had someone share hopes and dreams that didn't kind of fit what that new numeroscope was and like kind of supported what they were saying. But they will talk their way towards the right choice. You're the expert. If you're the numerologist, you can tell I'm going to jump back and forth between treating you, the listener, as a student or as a client. But like, we are the experts and we can choose. So the next thing we do is we present the new numeroscope and we explain each vibration in it. And I write a bunch of keywords on it, so like you don't have to listen back to like a 3-hour recording to be reminded of like what is in this new numeroscope. There are going to be keywords on it, so it makes sense. And the next thing we do is we introduce the new yearly cycles. And I also write keywords on the themes. I kind of explain what they can expect from the karmic release. I try to not overwhelm people because usually when we get to this part, like the new numeroscope and then the new yearly cycles, we're 2+ hours in. The mind is a little tired, even if the body could go on. And sometimes it really is like talking through and laying out numeroscopes and yearly cycles is like, it can be very emotional. There can be a lot of energy expended on this. People are very invested in this. It's their name. So, like, it's important. And when we get to the yearly cycles, while they are important, I try not to, like, overwhelm them. So I do a little less is more on the yearly cycles. Because if they look good, they look good. And if there's a pattern or a theme, you know, like, they are always better than what they come from. This is also why, like, at this point, instead of me talking, let's do some follow-up questions. Like, what we've been through, base numbers, numeroscope, old numeroscope, new numeroscope, yearly cycles. Maybe there's some follow-up questions. This is also where I let them know what the next steps are. So, like, you're going to get name lists. I'm going to scan this numeroscope and I'm going to scan these yearly cycles. You will have them. You can download them if you want to put them on an altar, if you want to frame them, if you want to just have them in a folder somewhere, whatever you want to do, that's great. There's some of the practicalities, like the sequence of names can be played around with, mirrored, is it fixed? The top points of like the rundown of how to legally change their name, the latest date to do it. If they, for whatever reason, you know, life happens, hopefully not, or like, but it does. If something changes, I ask them to let me know if they go beyond that deadline of the name change, because that will affect the cycles. And I do this because I've never actually had anyone come back and complain, but I do know some people who've pushed the deadline, or like, you know, the name change for whatever reason happened later, which means that like karmic releases and stuff like that might have gotten pushed or shifted in some way. And no one has ever complained, but I just want them to like know what to expect. And the last thing I do in my session is that I let them know what kind of support comes after this. So like they're the follow-up emails. I inquire about a testimonial if people feel like leaving that. I have also created, I think different numerologists do different things. I've created a bonus video series that lasts a year, meaning that after the legal name change, which I ask people to share with me, once your name change is legal, let me know and I will start this bonus and you will get an email with a video every month for 12 months to kind of like support this journey, because it really is a giant leap of faith to change your name. with the help of numerology. And it's really nice if someone is there to let you know what is normal and what is abnormal and where you are in the process. So for some people, these emails are kind of just like a pat on the shoulder, and they're filled with stuff they might like already know, because, you know, like I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel here. And people usually have lots of tools, but sometimes they need to be reminded to use their toolbox. So like these videos are also a way for me to remind you of the toolbox you have. And they kind of follow along and are things that I wish someone had told me, or like a resource I wish someone had created when I went through my name change. Because it's tough out there and it's really nice to get some support. So this is where we kind of end the session, is what kind of support do I offer, what's like part of it, and also like if they want any kind of follow-up session, like how they can book that. And then I thank them for the trust that they've put in me to do this. I really don't take this work for granted. I don't treat it with any kind of like disregard or lack of care. I'm deeply honored to work with people on these name changes. And the best gift I can get, the confirmation that like they can feel the change in their life based on the name change we've done together, and they want to offer that to their children, or when people like gift sessions to friends. Probably not name change sessions. I've yet to see someone gift a name change session, but it's out there. I think that's actually not true. I have had a couple of families where, you know, I've done the parents, and the parents have offered if the grown children want it, that they could get a name change too. And like, I'm deeply honored for like the whole families I get to work with, because it really is a vote of confidence and like confirmation that not only does the stuff work, because numerology of course works, but that it's nice to work with me on it. This was hopefully helpful for you. Now you know a little bit. You have a little insight about like the behind the scenes of a name change session. And if you're considering working with me, I would love to have you. Go to novaleewilder.com, find all my sessions, find out how to work with me. If you're working with a different numerologist, maybe there's something here that like you go, ooh, there's a question I want to ask, or something I want them to cover. Like maybe I can inspire you. I hope you found this episode interesting. And if you enjoy the podcast, please make sure you subscribe so that you're always the first to know when each episode is released. Also, please take a moment to review the podcast so that more people can find it and nerd out with us. If you want to talk about this episode or suggest a topic, or you have a question for future episodes, find me on Instagram at Novalee Wilder or at the Numerology Podcast and share your thoughts. Thanks for being a listener of the Numerology Podcast, and I'll see you in the next one.